It has been quite an eventful week for us all. Shabbos morning, I'm in shul, and they start saying Tehillim Psalms. What's going on? Are they just trying to delay? Are they filibustering? Someone tells me the war started. The United States and Israel attacked Iran. And of course, the whole Shabbos, I don't know what's happening. We have a off-duty cop who is stationed outside the shul. Everyone congregates to get the latest news. But of course, after Shabbos, we found out there's another war. And the United States and Israel are trying to dismantle the Islamist regime of Iran and its allies. And we're, I guess, 4 or 5 days into that. And from a military perspective, it seems like it's an absolute smashing success. The war began with a decapitation strike. The United States and the Israelis, they struck the supreme leader, the grand Ayatollah, the one who became famous chanting death to Israel, death to the United States, to America. Him and all his top brass, the modern-day Haman and his henchmen, were put down in the first action of the war. Now, we don't know what's actually happened on the ground, but from everything that we are hearing, it seems like it's just a walloping success. The Americans, the Israelis, which I love because it's the Jews and it's the Americans. I love it. Refueling planes and jets and precision missiles, raising Cain over Tehran, complete destruction of the Iranian Navy. I know you saw this, but they used a torpedo to destroy an Iranian warship. I'm sure all of y'all have seen that video by now. The first time since World War II, but we're not quite celebrating yet. We don't know how it's all going to play out. We don't know how it's going to end. We don't know what will ultimately happen. We don't know who's going to be the next leader. We don't know what's going to happen in Iran, but we could make out the faint possibility that maybe, just maybe, these Iranians, these intransigent Iranians, maybe they want to turn away from an attitude of fierce hostility towards us. Maybe they'll accept the existence of Israel. Maybe we can be friends. And wouldn't that be nice? Every Persian person that you know in this country is awesome. Wouldn't it be nice to have the Persians, the Iranians, as allies, as friends? We could be hopeful. We could be optimistic. We could and should pray. But we don't know how it's all going to end. And as you know, there have been some casualties, several U.S. service members, and of course in Israel, civilians. These people, these Iranians, they deliberately fire at civilian population centers, and even those in reinforced bunkers. Some of them were killed. But so far, it does seem that this campaign is doing very, very well. And I was thinking, we've been in war fighting mode, even those of us who are not engaged actively, but it's dominating our news and our thoughts. No one would have dreamt a few years ago that we'd see such a coordination, the United States and Israel, against the regime that chants death to America, death to Israel. And we hope and pray that the good news continues and our enemies are vanquished. May the Almighty protect all the soldiers. They should be safe and protected and should succeed in their missions. And may all of Hashem's enemies be destroyed swiftly and totally. On Purim, we read, of course, about Amalek. It's the nation that viciously attacked us right after the Exodus, when no other nation was brave and bold and crazy enough to attack us. Amalek did. And that, of course, is connected with the theme of Purim, because the villain of Purim, even though it happened in Persia, but the villain Haman, he was an Agagite, he was an Amalekite, and that's a nation that's completely dead set on destroying us. They're our arch enemies. They're arch enemies of God and God's people. And until Amalek is destroyed, God's throne is incomplete. And we hope and we pray that we will witness the day where God's throne will be complete. And we'll be able to experience a very, very different world. The truth is, it's hard to scan the headlines and not recognize that we're kind of living in very dramatic times. One could say even biblical times. It seems like a lot of the prophecies are unfolding before us. Now, we're not going to make any bombastic pronouncements. Only bona fide prophets can point to any specific phenomena and say that this is a harbinger of Messiah, this is a fulfillment of this or that prophecy. And as you know, we're a non-profit organization for some time, but it's pretty remarkable what's happening. It's been an amazing week. We had a fantastic Purim. We had a magnificent celebration for the second year in a row. We had the privilege of hosting a Purim banquet in our home. It was a delight. And there was only one part of the celebration that wasn't exactly 100%. You see, I prepared a speech. Yeah, that's kind of my thing. I'm going to be hosting a Purim celebration. I prepared a speech, and I thought it was fairly good. And unfortunately, the audience was not very attentive. And then some of the women and the children were outside. There was like a bouncy house on our block. They were there. So I went outside. I stumbled outside. And I told my wife, I said, I'm about to speak. Maybe you want to come inside and listen to it. And she said, well, why don't you just record it and I'll listen to the recording. So I actually did record it, not with my whole studio set up, but on my phone. But I'm kind of scared to listen to it. It was 16 minutes of rambling. But that's okay. People didn't listen. That's okay. We have a second chance on the podcast. Yes, I found a way to connect my speech, my poorly listened to speech on Purim. It fits right into the Parsha, of course. Of course it does. So it's about Purim. It's about the Parsha. And I think it's about life. We'll give it a second chance on the Parsha podcast from the Torah Center in Houston, Texas. Let's begin. It's Parshas Sisa. And we begin with a census done in a very unusual way. You don't count the people per capita. You use instead proxies. Every person gives a half shekel coin, and you count the half shekel coins, and through that, you know the number of Israelites. Counting people directly is dangerous. It causes a plague. Our people are guaranteed to exist for eternity, collectively, nationally. We are eternal. As a nation, we are impervious to anything. Nothing will destroy this nation. That's as a nation. But every individual is very vulnerable indeed, is not impervious. If you single out someone individually, if you evaluate someone individually, and then you start evaluating this person individually and that person, you start evaluating all the people individually, in effect, you're changing the standing of the person from being just one part of the collective whole. And for that little moment when you're counting them, you're evaluating them as individual. And that causes that heaven too evaluates that person as an individual. And if the heavenly court, the commentators tell us, if the heavenly court judges an individual as an individual, it's very likely that the strict, withering judgment will find some guilt in that person's behavior. We don't want to be singled out, to be scrutinized by heaven. We don't want a divine audit. And therefore, we don't count individuals as single entities. Instead, everyone gives a coin. The coins are fungible commodities. They're not even full coins, they're half coins. And you count the half shekel coins. You count by proxy, even today. It is forbidden for us to count our brethren as people. Some people have a custom to say, oh, we're counting. How many people do we have over here? So they say not one, not two, not three, not four, which is a way to circumvent the rules. We're not counting. We're saying how many people are not here. Oh, okay. That's a nice, clever workaround. If you want to see if you have a minyan, if you have a quorum of 10, the common way to do it is to use a verse in Psalms chapter 28, verse 9, a beautiful verse, a verse that happens to have 10 words. Hoshia es amecha, Uvarech es nachal asecha. Save, provide salvation to your nation. Bless your inheritance. Lead them as a shepherd. Lift them up forever. It's a beautiful verse. It's a verse that talks about the wonderful, special relationship that we have with the Almighty. It has 10 words, and you do that. Problem is, if you get to 6, like Hoshea es amecha, you have to kind of count the words to know, because there's 2 S's also. Of course, Hoshea es amecha. If you have to say Hoshea es. S is what? It's 2. It's 5. But that's a way that you can count without counting. Now, the census was done every year, and the proceeds of those half shekels were used to procure the communal sacrifices, and it was also done initially during the first fundraising drive of the tabernacle. Each person gave a half shekel silver coin, and those coins were used to create the silver sockets, the adonim, that secured the wooden beams at the base of the tabernacle. If you were rich and wanted to give a full shekel, you couldn't. If you were poor, you wanted to give a tenth of a shekel, that was not an option. Everyone was the same. Now, it's very interesting how the Torah frames this ceremony. When you want to count the Israelites, every person should give a kofer nafsho, a redemption for their soul. It's described as kofer nafsho, a redemption for their soul. And what's that? That's a half shekel coin. And the commentaries tell us something very interesting. The word kofer, it means a redemption, like kapara, redemption or forgiveness, but it also means heresy. It also means heresy, which is interesting. It's almost like the Torah the verse can be read as saying that every person gives something as heresy. And the commentators tell us something very interesting. There are many things the Torah prohibits. But everything that is prohibited by the Torah, there is a kosher version of that thing. So if someone really, really wants to eat blood, there's one part of the animal that's drenched with blood. And you can eat it. You want to taste blood? You can taste blood in a kosher fashion. Eat the liver. You want to eat pig? It's not kosher. I heard it's very tasty. It's delectable. It's so yummy. I've been told. Never tasted. The brain of a shibuta fish tastes exactly like pork. And by the way, I spoke to someone who told me that I've eaten pork and I've eaten the brain of this shibuta fish, and they're indistinguishable. Oh, if you want to have milk and meat, it's forbidden by the Torah, but if you take the udders that are drenched in milk, that's actually considered non-dairy by halachic standards. It's a kosher way to eat milk and meat. But there's a concept. Everything that's forbidden, there's a kosher version of it. Heresy is forbidden. Heresy is the worst thing. To repudiate God, completely unacceptable. But there's a kosher version of it. And that's charity. And here's why. When someone comes to ask for help, someone needs support, some cause needs funding. And you can say, well, they need help, they need support, they need funding. Who caused them to need funding? Aha! Isn't that the handiwork of God? Didn't God make them destitute and needing and wanting? Didn't God situate them in a situation of privation, of lacking? Why should I help them? Why should I support them? Why should I give charity? Charity is an act of heresy. That's what the commentators tell us. Very, very interesting. And that's kosher and appropriate heresy. And maybe, just maybe, that's why this is a sanctioned heresy. Maybe that's why when it describes the act of charity that every Israelite participated in it calls it with a word that also means heresy. Very interesting. We, in our Parsha, are wrapping up the instructions for the tabernacle. We read about the copper laver, the kior, before the priest walked into the tabernacle, and certainly before he did any service in the tabernacle. he must wash his hands and his feet. You go to the laver, you open up the spouts, you place your right hand on your right hand on your right foot, and left hand on left foot, and the water cleans and washes your hands and feet. And today, of course, we don't have a tabernacle, and we don't have a laver, we don't have a kior to wash your hands and feet. But nevertheless, the commentators tell us that the mitzvah that we have each morning to wash our hands, that is in some way representative or resembling the mitzvah of the priests washing their hands and feet. Just as a priest must wash his hands before walking into the temple, before doing service in the tabernacle each day, we have to realize that we too are given a grave responsibility, a sacred, sacrosanct responsibility to do the service of God. We wake up, we do a service of God. We pray, we study, we eat. That too is service of God. Everything we do is service of God. And if we begin the day, just as a priest begins his day by washing your hands. Why are we living? Why do we wake up in the morning? We wake up in the morning to serve God. And to do that, we must wash our hands. Next, we read about the anointing oil and the incense and the ketores. We have the instructions to make the oil, to make the incense. We're talking about the precise ingredients of each one of these two components of the tabernacle. The anointing oil will be used to anoint the tabernacle, its vessels, the priests, their garments. This oil will also be used to anoint kings. The Torah commands us that it cannot be used for any other purpose. You cannot use this just to place some nice, delectable oil upon yourself. It's forbidden to make this same concoction to replicate the anointing oil. Next comes the incense. Again, Moshe told the ingredients of the incense. He has to mix it like a spice maker, and it too is forbidden to be replicated. Next, we have the designation of Bezalel. This is a massive project, and there's a person who's in charge of the project. Moshe's great-great-nephew, Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, to the tribe of Judah. He is selected to oversee the entire project of building the tabernacle and all of its vessels. The tabernacle must be built, but it cannot be built on Shabbos. You must observe the Shabbos. Anything, any activity that is required to build the tabernacle is a violation of the Shabbos, and chapter 31 ends with Moshe receiving the tablets, the 2 stone tablets inscribed by the finger of God. That's the first half of the Parsha. And if you just read up to there, you would have no idea what bomb is going to be detonated in our Parsha. Because next we read about a terrible catastrophe, the golden calf. The nation saw that Moshe was tardy. He wasn't coming down the mountain when he had promised to come. He said, I'm going to be back in 40 days. And they started counting. And it's day 40 and Moshe is nowhere to be found. And the Satan, Rashi tells us, led them astray. He showed them confusion, darkness, obfuscation. He presented to them, projected in heaven, the coffin of Moshe. Look, Moshe was supposed to come. He didn't show. He's a no-show. He's not around. You are leaderless. You are vulnerable. You must very quickly appoint a successor. And they come to Aaron and they tell him, arise, make for us a God who will go before us. Because this man Moshe, who took us out of Egypt, we don't know what happened to him. And the truth is, Moshe was very precise in his words. He's supposed to come the next day, because when Moshe said, I'll be out for 40 days and 40 nights, he meant 40 full days and 40 full nights. And therefore, the first day, it's only half a day, it doesn't count. It wasn't a full day. You got to start counting from the next day. They were 1 day off. And they went haywire. And they told Aaron, we need a replacement for Moshe. Make us a God. This is one of the most inexplicable events, maybe the most inexplicable event in the Torah. It's been a few months since the Exodus. They're eating manna, angelic food, drinking water from a rock. It's only 40 days after the great national revelation at Sinai. And the nation wants a God, lowercase g. They want a replacement for Moshe. And they're demanding that Aaron play ball. And Aaron oversee this creation of a replica Moshe. You recall perhaps at the end of Parshas Mishpatim, chapter 24 of our book, when Moshe ascended to heaven, he appointed Aaron and Hur, Moshe's nephew, as his substitutes. Any question, you go to these two people. They're in charge in my stead. Hur is not found in this episode. And the reason why, even though it's hinted to, the Talmud tells us that when the mob was looking for a god, Hur tried to stop this lunacy, and they killed him. And only Aaron remained. And Aaron had to make a choice what to do. And the Talmud tells us that Aaron was a very unique person. He was the high priest, and he was also a prophet. And killing a priest prophet is unforgivable. Doing idolatry, you can still get forgiveness. It's the worst thing in the world, but still, there's a possibility of getting out of that spiritual quagmire. And Aaron made a calculation. And as it turns out, the correct calculation that he should play ball with the mob. But he tries to delay. Verse 2. He tells them, go get the gold, the rings, the nose rings, the earrings from your wives, from your children. Go collect that valuable jewelry. And Rashi explains that Aaron understood that the people, certainly the wives and the children, they're not eager to part with their precious jewelry. Maybe they'll need some cajoling, some persuasion. And maybe by that time Moshe will come and this catastrophe will be avoided. But the mob was so eager, so determined, so unyielding, they didn't negotiate. They snatched the gold and they brought it to Aaron. And Aaron made a golden calf. How did he make the golden calf? Rashi tells us. He put all the gold into a fire. And there were some Egyptian converts, members of this mixed multitude, who still harbored a lot of the feelings and the attitudes and the mores of Egypt. And some of them were sorcerers. And they were able to conjure a golden calf out of that pot of gold. That's one version Rashi tells us. The second version, there was a man named Micha, and he had a special plate. He found this plate, or he got this plate. He took this plate. Moshe used this plate to float the bones of Joseph to the surface. Moshe wrote on a plate, Alei Shar, arise, O ox. Joseph is compared to an ox. And the Egyptians, when they wanted to keep Joseph in Egypt, so they put all sorts of charms and incantations and sorcery to keep Joseph's bones submerged at the bottom of the Nile. And Moshe used some device to float those bones. And this person, this Micha, grabbed that plate, and he took that plate and threw it into the fire. And indeed, an ox, a small ox, a calf, jumped out of the fire. And Aaron still tried to delay. We'll have a festival tomorrow, not today. And by tomorrow, who knows, maybe Moshe will come before anyone starts worshiping the golden calf, and we can avoid the worst of it. Maybe they'll sleep in. It happens, right? But they woke up early, and they started bringing sacrifices, and began to behave in a revelrous fashion. A debacle, a catastrophe, a fiasco, a cataclysm. Our sages frame this sin in the most severe terms. Adam, before his sin, he was pure. There was no intermingling of good and bad. And he did a sin in the garden. He ate from the tree of knowledge, good and evil, and there was a commingling of good and bad. And Sinai was the restoration of an entire nation to the way they were, to the state of Adam before his sin. And the sin of the golden calf was a redux, was a repeat of Adam's sin in the garden. All that hard work, that cleansing, that purification, that refinement, that restoration of the nation back to the way Adam was before his sin, all that was undone with the golden calf. At Sinai, each member of this nation was granted 2 crowns by angels. One for Naaseh, we will do. One for Nishma, we will listen. These crowns symbolized what the nation had become. And now, those crowns were taken away. That great heralding achievement was lost. Now Moshe is still in heaven. And while the nation is doing this terrible sin below, he's there to get the tablets. And the rest of the Parsha is going to be dealing with the aftermath of this terrible sin. And Moshe is informed by God what's happening. And he begins to pray to save us. And his prayer is an absolute masterclass of salvation. He presents all these different arguments of exculpation, of acquittal. What will the Egyptians say? Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Remember your promises to the forefathers. And then Moshe descends the mountain, and he's holding the tablets. And he meets Joshua, and they go to the camp, and he sees the golden calf. He sees the dancing, and he throws the tablets and shatters them at the foot of the mountain. And he grabs the golden calf, and he burns it in a fire, and he grinds it into a fine powder, and he spreads the powder on the water, and he makes the nation drink. He wants to inspect them the way a suspected adulteress, the way a sota is inspected. And all the perpetrators of this terrible crime will be put to death. Those who sinned with witnesses and forewarning, they were executed by the Levites with a sword. And those who sinned with witnesses but without forewarning, they died in a plague. And those who sinned, well, without witnesses and without forewarning, they died of a stomach disease by imbibing the water infused with the gold powder of the golden calf. After Moshe kind of clamps down on the bleeding, he goes up the mountain a second time, and ultimately a third time. In total, Moshe was on the mountain to heaven for 120 days, 3 stints of 40 days apiece. The first time to get the first set of tablets, the last time to get the second set of tablets, and the middle 40 to gain forgiveness. God informs Moshe, yes, I won't destroy the nation, but the relationship will be downgraded. Yes, they'll go into the land, they'll conquer the land flowing with milk and honey. They'll conquer the Canaanites, but God will not be in their midst. Moshe takes his tent, pitches it out to the camp, far away from the people. Moshe makes all these requests from God. It's one of the most mysterious parts of the Torah. It's very profound, very esoteric, very Kabbalistic. Show me your ways. Hodi'enas rachacha. Inform me your ways. Show me your honor. Moshe is trying to get a deep understanding of God. And God tells him, you could see my back, as it were, but my front cannot be seen. You can understand God in the same way that you understand something from behind, but not from the front, whatever that means. God put Moshe in a cleft in the rock, very mysterious, and his honor passed before Moshe. And the Parsha ends with the second set of tablets. God tells Moshe, make 2 more stone tablets. I'll write on the second set of tablets what was on the first set of tablets that you shattered. And God tells him, don't make a pact with the idolatrous Canaanite nations. Instead, you must shatter their altars, destroy their pillars, uproot their idolatrous trees. This nation has a weakness for idolatry. You're going to get to the land. The land is teeming with idolatry. Don't bow down to their gods. If you make a pact with the inhabitants of the land, you'll end up following their gods and intermarrying with them, and they will lead you astray. We read about the 3 festivals, and the Parsha ends with a description of Moshe descending the mountain, this time bearing the 2nd set of tablets, and unaware that his face was radiating. Aaron and all the Israelites, they saw Moshe. His face was gleaming. His face was as bright as the sun, and they were scared to approach him. And there's an iconic Rashi. I love this Rashi. Every year we like to read it. Chapter 34, verse 30. Bo ure'eh. Come and see, Rashi tells us, the awesome, destructive power of sin. Before the nation made the golden calf, they experienced prophecy. And he quotes a verse, the vision of the honor of God was like a consuming fire atop the mountain. And they weren't scared, and they weren't shaken. And once they do the golden calf, they get so downgraded that even the luminous visage of Moshe frightened them and shook them up. Moshe's face, his countenance, his visage was so blinding, he was compelled to wear a mask to not blind the people. When he would speak to God, he would remove the mask, and when he spoke to the people, he placed a mask over his face. In my book, that I'm sure all of y'all have read already a few times, I explained this idea, or I suggested that Moshe had achieved such a level of dominance of his soul that there was nothing to sheath his soul. So he was just a soul. And there's no way for a soul and body to interface. It's just too much. So Moshe had to create an artificial body, that mask, an artificial blockage, so that the power of his soul does not destroy the people who are still housed by a physical, corporeal body. That's the Parsha. I want to share an idea that I tried to share. I tried futilely to share during the Purim feast that we hosted in our house yesterday. And it relates to the Parsha, and it relates to Purim, and it relates, most of all, to life. There were people who wanted to do something horrible, unconscionable in our Parsha. A group of people wanted to do something unthinkable. They wanted to make a golden calf. Was it exactly idolatry? Was it something which resembled idolatry? They said, well, this man Moshe wanted a replacement for Moshe, and they never ever claimed that it was a replacement from God. We've talked about this many times in the past. But still, what they wanted to do was completely unconscionable. And a man stood up to them. Not just any man, Moshe's nephew, the man that Moshe appointed to go with Aaron to be the leader in his stead. His name was Hur. And he tried to stop them. What are you doing? Making a golden calf? Unacceptable. And they killed him. Murder? There's no permission for that. It's one of the 10 Commandments. It's the worst sin of them all. But they did it. Why did they do it? Because they wanted this golden calf. And there was nothing that was going to stop them. And if Aaron would have tried to stop them, they would have killed him too. Aaron, beloved by all. No one had a bad word to say about Aaron. Everyone mourned Aaron for 30 days. A man who loved peace, who loved humanity, who pursued peace. No one had a bad thing to say about Aaron. They would have killed Aaron as well. It's amazing to appreciate the dedication of these people in making the golden calf. Aaron said to them, go get the gold from your wives, your children. You see dad coming frenzied. Where's your gold? Where's your gold? I don't know. I don't know. It's missing. Dad's got a gambling problem, right? You don't just give him your gold. I'm not going to part with it so easily. They snatched it. And there's a golden calf. And Aaron says, we'll have a festival tomorrow. They wake up early. They're eager. This is a portrait of determination that, were it to be used for a good cause, would be unbelievable. Nothing was going to stop them from what they wanted. Just imagine if they had that same zeal, that same passion, that same ruthlessness to try to do what's right. All of history would have been different. The Torah is instructive. The word Torah means instruction. And I think there's a pattern with all the villains presented to us in the Torah and in Tanakh. They're all teaching us something profound. And we have to learn from every person, even the villains, even the cruel, even the wicked, even the bad people. What do we learn from them? Of course, not their values, not their behavior, not their choices. But look at the lengths that they're willing to go to advance their cause. Look at their zeal, their determination, their fierce, unyielding, uncompromising determination. It's Purim season. And the Megillah starts off with a feast. Achashverosh wants to celebrate. We're going to have a celebration 180 days plus 7. Why is he celebrating? What's there to celebrate for? So Sages tell us that the prophet had pronounced that the exile will last for only 70 years. Now, no one knew exactly when the exile starts. When does the clock start ticking? Is it when did the exile happen in stages? So the prophet didn't spell out exactly when it starts. So Belshazzar, the previous king, said, well, I know when it starts. And he made his party, and that didn't end up well for him, as we know. And Achashverosh is sure that his calculation is correct. And if 7 years have elapsed, and the exile is still ongoing, the exile will never end. The temple will never be rebuilt. And he wants to celebrate. And how does he celebrate? With 180 days of festivities. We're going to have, in a couple of months, it's the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. So we'll have extra big fireworks on July 4th. And there'll be some celebrations, I understand. But who's calling for 180 days of non-stop celebration? We just can't do that. It's just too much. Achashverosh is not someone that we want to look up to. He's not a person to admire. And even though the Megillah treats him very charitably because he's the king at the time, and ultimately he paved the way for the building of the Second Temple, but he's a villain. And he's teaching us something unbelievable. How to celebrate something good. Think about the endurance and stamina you have to celebrate 180 days. I was thinking, my wife likes to say that the only time I like to go to parties is when I'm drunk once a year on Purim. That's it. The rest of the time, I'd rather stay home. It's called introvert. Introvert. It's people like that. I suspect most of the people listening to my voice right now fall into the same camp. I'd rather just stay home. She knows if I want to go out to the party, it must be Purim and I must have drunk something. But even then, you go to a party, you have a good time. After an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 180 minutes, you're kind of done, right? I think even the guys who like to party, 180 minutes is probably plenty. What kind of stamina do you have to celebrate day after day for a half a year? If we had that same celebration for the good things that God does for us, imagine what the world would look like. We must thank God, we're told, for every breath. We have to thank God for all that He does for us. We have so much to celebrate. We should be celebrating every day that we got the Torah at Sinai. We had the Exodus. We have the opportunity to study the Mani's Torah. We have the opportunity to do his mitzvos. Every day we should be dancing. We should learn from the villains. Amalek is the origin of the villain, or the other villain maybe, of the Purim story. They attacked the nation when we were invincible. We just trounced Egypt, splitting of the sea. Everyone heard about it. Amalek attacks. Why? Our sages tell us it was a suicide mission. They knew that they were going to get smoked, and they did it nonetheless. They have such pathological hatred for Israel. They're willing to die just for the opportunity that maybe they might damage some of the Israelites, some of the vulnerable ones. In the words of the Midrash, there was a steaming, boiling bath. Now, a bath, how hot did it get? But imagine a bath of oil. You walk in, you're burned for life. No one's willing to jump in. You jump in, you're dead, you're burned. It's an awful way to go. Amalek says, I'm willing to do it. They're willing to give up everything and suffer tremendously for their cause. Martyrdom. We have a lot to learn from them. Do we have martyrdom for our cause? Esav. He wants to kill his brother. Why? Because he thinks his brother did something wrong by stealing, by usurping his blessings. He was planning on killing Jacob. He had a volcanic rage towards Jacob. And if someone writes you a nasty email, you want to respond, it's good advice to wait till the next day, right? You wait till the next day, you sleep on it, it doesn't sting quite as much. Certainly a year later, 5 years later, it doesn't even matter anymore. You don't even feel it at all. Jacob flees his brother, and he appears 34 years later. 14 years he spends in the academy of Shem and Aver, and 20 years in the house of Laban. And Esav's virulent, violent hatred has not diminished an iota. No matter how much time it's elapsed, his hatred did not temper. His temper did not temper. It was still fiery hot. It was like Esav had a magical thermos that didn't allow the rage to cool down. Every year during the Pesach Seder, my grandfather talked about the thermos. The thermos. He would say it in Hebrew, Thermos. Thermos. Like half of Hebrew is just words in English with a little bit of a funny pronunciation. What's the magical thermos? Well, in the middle of the Haggadah, we talk about how much we have to thank God. If only he did this, Dayenu, we'd have enough reason to thank him. And one of them doesn't make any sense. Ilu kirvanu l'fnei hasin, if God brought us to Sinai, but didn't give us the Torah, Dayenu, it would be sufficient. We'd have to thank him. Now, ask the question, wait a minute, to go to Sinai, if we just went to the restaurant and we didn't order any food, we'd still be happy. No, the whole purpose of going to Sinai is to get the Torah. So every year my grandfather, would tell us the lesson of the thermos. When the nation arrived at Sinai, they were in this incredible close relationship with God. That in itself is an end goal. But that needed to be perpetuated. You needed a thermos to keep the heat of that relationship. And that's the Torah. The Torah is there to ensure that the relationship forged at Sinai is perpetuated for eternity. It's a magical thermos. We have a thermos that can restore or can maintain the heat of that relationship for thousands of years. Esav had a thermos of his own. It kept his rage piping hot with no diminishment over the course of 34 years. It didn't wane. It didn't drop off. Laban, another legendary villain. He's trying to fleece Jacob. Worked for 7 years? Sure, I'll give you Rachel. 7 years later, with no shame, he replaces Rachel with Leah. He's a crook. An unrepentant and shameless crook. Sure, you can marry Rachel as well, just 7 more years. And then, during the last 6 years that Jacob is there, he's trying to fleece him. And he changes the terms of their agreement 100 times. He is unbending in his determination to take advantage of Jacob, to defraud Jacob. 100 different tactics. Absolutely indefatigable in his desire to fleece Jacob. Bilam, I'll curse him. Give me 7 altars, 14 sacrifices from this mountain. It doesn't work. Well, let's go to another mountain. 7 altars, 14 sacrifices from that mountain. It doesn't work. Go to the 3rd mountain. 7 altars, 14 sacrifices. We don't want to emulate any of these people in their values, in their agenda, and what they stand for. But if we were into our themes, as committed, as dedicated, as determined in our themes, as our enemies are in their themes, we change the entire world. I always tell my kids, if you're going to go to a game, don't run into the building. Even when we play, the boys play after Shabbos, they have the lead, the yeshiva lead. I always tell them, don't run into the building. You're excited, you want to go watch the game, you want to play the game? Don't run inside. Because then, if you run inside there, but you don't run inside to go study, to go pray, to go do charity, that means that you're more excited about this than about doing the will of the Almighty. So at least don't run in for here. But I have some friends who like to come to prayer late. But they make up for it. Don't worry about it. They make up for coming late by leaving early. So it's a mitzvah of late and early. It's a mitzvah. It balances out. You come late, you leave early. So there's a little bit of late, a little bit of early. It balances out. But if you're going to go to the movies or go to a play, Broadway, Hamilton, is that still a thing? Les Miserables? I don't know if these are still things. Disney on Ice? I don't know. No would say, I'll come late and I'll leave early just to, let me check the box. If we were as committed in advancing our agenda as these villains are in theirs, we'd change the entire world. Shechem, he wants to marry Dinah. Yeah, I'll circumcise today. Yeah, I'll get everyone to circumcise today. No, sleep on it. No, can reconsider it. Let me talk it over with my advisors right now without delay. We could even say there are people, there's countries who are willing to destroy their entire country, spend enormous amounts of their very strapped budget just to support people who may kill some Jews. It's the most evil, macabre, barbaric cause in the world. But look at the dedication. They're willing to die for their cause. Someone was saying, like a obituary for this grand Ayatollah. He was a man of science. When a kid would tell him, I want to be a shaheed, which means I want to be a martyr, kill Jews, infidels. He says, no. First you study science and only then you become a shaheed. That's what he told him. Crazy. People are nuts. A repugnant value system. But look at their dedication. I think if we had Laban's shameless ingenuity and Ahasuerus's incredible endurance and Amalek's martyrdom and Esav's Thermos and Bilam's persistence and the zeal of the golden calf makers to do the will of God, we would be unstoppable. Now, maybe that's too much to ask for. So here's what I want to propose. I want to make a proposal here on the Parsha podcast. I always feel like it's the end. It's 50 minutes of the Parsha podcast. I could go a bit rogue because most of the listeners drop off like after 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes is basically no one left. So I can say whatever I want. It's just, there's no risk of it ever coming back to bite me. Here's what I want to propose. Make it a little bit easier. There is a verse in Psalms, chapter 16, verse 8. Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid. Translate. That means I have placed in all my actions at all times, God, the fear, the dread, the awesomeness of God is always in front of my eyes. It's a beautiful verse. David's describing, or the psalmist is describing, a level of palpable recognition of the presence of God at all times. Now, if you look in the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, Chapter 1, Law number 1, the very beginning of it, in the comment, or the glosses, I think it's called, of the Ramah. This is the very beginning of the book of Jewish law, the Code of Jewish Law. He cites this verse. Shivisi Hashem lenegdi. The presence of God is in front of me at all times. At all times. This is a great principle of Torah. And this is the stature and the standing of the righteous who always walk before God, as it were. Their whole life, they're in the presence of God. Because if you're sitting in front of a king, you're going to behave very differently than if you're sitting at home. You're not going to slouch and kick your feet up and make a mess. You'll behave in a dignified manner. So when you're by yourself and your actions and the way you sit, the way you interact with people, the way you speak, it's going to be very different if you're in your house or if you're in front of a king, King Charles, I guess, Elizabeth. Not many kings left. Solomon. But if you're in the presence of an important person, of a king, of a president, you're not going to speak the same way. You're not going to act the same way. We're commanded to behave, to comport ourselves as if we're always in front of Almighty God. This is a great principle of Torah. This is the level, the stature of the righteous. So I would think certainly this could almost be like the mission statement of our people. It's the first law. This is the principle of Torah. We should always behave and act as if we're in the presence of God, because we are, of course. Now, if we did that, and we tried to advance that cause with the same ingenuity and tenacity and ferocity and unyielding, uncompromising determination as all these villains, we change the whole world. Not a question. But maybe we could make it a bit easier for us. Shivis Hashem lenegdi samid. The presence of God is always in front of me. What does that mean? Tamid. Always. I had this in my notes last week. It was a long podcast, so I just skipped it. I said, we'll talk about it some other time. But now it's some other time. It's a week later. The first verse of last week's Parsha. Command the Israelites to take the special refined olive oil, lahalos ner tamid, to kindle a lamp, always. That same word, shivis lenegdi samid. I've placed God's in front of me at all times. The menorah is lit at all times. What does it mean the menorah is lit at all times? So Rashi tells us, it means every single night. Every single night they would light the menorah. Now, of course, in the morning, the menorah would burn out. So you go there at noon, and the menorah is not lit. So how does the Torah describe it as tamid, as always? Well, if it's every day, then it's always. The Ramban, he argues on Rashi. He says, no. Always, it means always. It doesn't mean always daily, consistently, nightly. It means always. It means always. So he explains the verse is not talking about the menorah. It's talking about one particular candle of the menorah. You see, the menorah, it had 6 branches on either side and one in the middle for a total of 7. The western lamp, the one that was closest to the Holy of Holies, was always lit. Always. The other 6 was every night, but one of them was always lit. And when the verse says that you must kindle the menorah at all times, that's not a reference to the menorah in general. That's a reference to the western lamp. And for that, you can truly say tamid at all times. There's a dispute here between Rashi and the Ramban how to define the word tamid. The Ramban says tamid means, like it sounds, all the time, all the time, all the time. If you ask the Ramban, well, what does it mean, Shivisi Hashem Leneg Samid, this first law in our book of laws, this great principle of Torah, what does it mean? It means at all times. But maybe Rashi is telling us we can still fulfill this if we do it every day. It would be ideal for us to learn from the villains, to mimic their same resolute determination and ruthlessness and unyielding, uncompromising tenacity and ferocity to advance their cause. We should do that in our cause. And if we did that, we'd change the whole world. But maybe we can have comfort in knowing that tamid, always, even if you do it once a day, if we had one moment a day, maybe when we say the Shema, but one moment, one time a day, where we have this touch point with what we really stand for, what we really want, and have a little jolt of that determination that we see these amazing examples, for bad, of course, from all these villains. But if we did it once a day, that too will change ourselves. And who knows, maybe it will also change the world as well. I appreciate you listening to this edition of the Parsha podcast. It's a special Wednesday recording because yesterday was Purim, the year 5786. So I'm going to have to go hustle to the studio to do the editing to prepare it for release tonight. I hope I'll be able to do it in time. I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful rest of your week. We have now finished Purim. Even in the city of Jerusalem that has Purim today, the 15th as opposed to the 14th, Purim's over there as well. Our eyes, of course, are set. 30 days from now is Pesach. No rest for the weary. 30 days before the festival, you got to start studying and preparing for the festival. So we have a lot to look forward to, please God. Hope you have a wonderful day, wonderful week, and a magnificent Shabbos upcoming. And please God, with the unending help of the Almighty, we'll talk again next week. My name is Rabbi Wolbe at gmail.com.